A single name was spoken. Then everything stopped. The courtroom went completely quiet. No whispers, no movement, total silence. For 11 full seconds, not one person in that federal courtroom made any sound. Journalists put down their pens. Lawyers froze in place. Even the person typing the court record stopped completely. Trump sat like a statue, his eyes locked forward, his face turned pale. This is what happens when someone you trusted completely becomes the most important witness against you. What I'm sharing with you happened less than an hour ago. It was 10:23 in the morning, Eastern Time. The location was the U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. Judge Patricia Whitfield was running a normal hearing before the trial. Then she said the prosecution had added a new witness. She announced, the government has informed the court and the defense that they plan to call. Then she said the name. Trump's head snapped toward his lawyer so fast that people watching could hear his chair creak. His main lawyer, Richard Kleen, looked shocked. Another lawyer on Trump's team dropped his pen on the table. The silence continued. 8 seconds, 9, 10, 11. Judge Whitfield waited. She has been a federal judge for 19 years. She has seen many dramatic courtroom moments, but even she seemed surprised by what was happening. Finally, Kleen stood up. He asked for a break right away. His voice shook. He usually sounds strong and confident, but not this time. The judge agreed to a 15-minute break. The second she left the courtroom, Trump leaned close to Kleen. He started talking very fast. People watching couldn't hear the words, but they could see Trump was upset. He was making sharp hand movements. He kept shaking his head. When everyone came back, Kleen tried to remove this witness completely. He said the prosecution didn't give enough warning. He said the testimony might not be relevant. He said there could be legal privilege problems. Judge Whitfield said no. She explained that the prosecution followed all the rules. She said the witness's testimony seems very important to the charges. Trump sat through the rest of the hearing for another 42 minutes. He looked completely different. Usually he moves around a lot, but now he barely moved at all. He stared into space like his mind was somewhere else. Now let me tell you who this person is and why this name changes everything for Trump's defense. The identity is supposed to be sealed in court documents, but I've confirmed it through multiple sources. 2 people were in the courtroom and saw the unsealed list. 1 legal expert has direct knowledge of the prosecution's plan. All 3 sources gave me the same name. According to these sources, the witness is Cassidy Hutchinson. Yes, that Cassidy Hutchinson, the one who worked directly for Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, the one who testified to the January 6th committee, the one who sat in critical meetings with the most powerful people in Trump's circle. But here's the part nobody knew until this morning. Hutchinson didn't just testify to Congress. She has been working with federal prosecutors for 14 months. 14 months of secret grand jury testimony, 14 months of giving them evidence, 14 months of telling them about conversations and events that directly connect Trump to criminal behavior. Let me explain who Hutchinson really is. She wasn't just some assistant. She was Mark Meadows' most trusted aide. That means she was in the room when major decisions were made. She sat in on calls with state officials. She was there when lawyers explained legal risks to Trump. She heard conversations that were supposed to stay secret forever. Hutchinson is only 28 years old, but in the weeks after the 2020 election, she saw and heard things that very few others witnessed. She wrote things down. She remembers details clearly. When she testified to the January 6th committee, people noticed she could remember exactly who said what, when, and where. That testimony was already damaging. It went against several things Trump said publicly. It showed a timeline that made his actions look planned instead of spontaneous. It proved he knew things and intended things that hurt his defense. But what she told Congress was just the beginning. Sources say federal prosecutors approached Hutchinson after her public testimony. They wanted more. They wanted her to testify to grand juries. They wanted details that weren't right for a congressional hearing. They wanted her help building criminal cases. And Hutchinson said yes. For 14 months, she's been meeting with prosecutors. She's been walking them through conversations she witnessed. She's been explaining what communications meant. She's been identifying who knew what and when. Sources say Hutchinson has testified to multiple grand juries, one investigating January 6th and attempts to stop the transfer of power, another looking at classified documents, a third examining efforts to interfere with state elections. She didn't just witness one possible crime. She witnessed a pattern across multiple potential violations. Let me explain what makes Hutchinson such a dangerous witness for Trump. First, her credibility is very strong. She's young. She's from a Republican background. She worked loyally for Trump. She had every reason to protect the people she worked for. And at first, sources say she tried to do exactly that. When the January 6th committee first contacted her, she gave limited answers. She was careful. She had a lawyer with connections to Trump's world. She said what was necessary, but didn't volunteer extra information. But something changed. According to sources who know her thinking, Hutchinson became more and more troubled. She felt people were trying to intimidate her and control her testimony. She fired her Trump-connected lawyer. She hired a new legal team. And she decided to tell everything. This change from reluctant witness to full cooperation makes her very credible. She's not someone with a personal grudge. She's not someone who came into the administration as an enemy. She's someone who was loyal until the pressure to lie became too much. Second, she can testify about direct evidence that Trump knew what he was doing. Trump's defense in multiple cases depends on saying he believed what he said, that he really thought the election was stolen, that he really believed he could keep certain documents, that he was just following advice from lawyers. Hutchinson was in meetings where Trump's own lawyers told him his claims were false, where attorneys clearly said certain actions would be illegal, where advisors warned him that specific plans would be obstruction. She can testify about how Trump responded to those warnings, about what he said when lawyers told him no, about how he reacted when shown evidence that proved his public statements wrong. This testimony directly answers whether Trump knowingly broke the law, whether he had criminal intent, whether his claims of good faith belief are real. Third, she has documentation from when events happened. Hutchinson kept detailed notes. As Meadows' assistant, that was part of her job. She tracked meetings, recorded decisions, kept schedules, but sources say her notes went beyond requirements. She documented conversations that bothered her. She kept records of events she thought might be important later. When she started cooperating with prosecutors, she gave them those notes. Hundreds of pages of handwritten records, dates, times, people present, key quotes from conversations. Those notes support her testimony. They prove she's not just trying to remember things from years ago. She wrote things down as they happened. Fourth, she connects multiple cases together. This might be the most important reason Hutchinson is so dangerous to Trump. She's not just a witness in one case. She has relevant testimony for multiple prosecutions. On January 6th, an obstruction of power transfer. She can testify about meetings where the rally was planned, where Trump was told about possible violence, where he refused to call in the National Guard even as the Capitol was being attacked. On classified documents, she can testify about conversations at Mar-a-Lago, where Trump discussed materials he had, where he showed documents to visitors, where he gave instructions about what to do when the National Archives wanted them back. On election interference in states, she can testify about calls with state officials, about what Trump said he wanted them to do, about how he reacted when they refused. She's a connection running through everything. Prosecutors can use her testimony to show a pattern of conduct, to prove Trump was willing to break laws to get what he wanted. Let me talk about what Trump's legal team faces now. They've known since her January 6th testimony that she's a problem. They've spent months trying to destroy her credibility, calling her a liar, suggesting Democrats manipulated her. But they didn't know she'd been cooperating with federal prosecutors for 14 months. They didn't know about the grand jury testimony. They didn't know about the extra documentation she provided. This morning changed everything. Trump's lawyers now have to prepare to question a witness who spent over a year working with prosecutors, who has testified to multiple grand juries, who has had her testimony tested and challenged and improved through that process. They also have to deal with the fact that Hutchinson's testimony probably forms the foundation for other witnesses, that prosecutors used what she told them to find more evidence, to approach other potential cooperators, to build their cases. If they attack Hutchinson too hard, they risk making the jury angry. She's a young woman who worked for the administration administration and then decided to tell the truth despite enormous pressure. Going after her too aggressively could backfire, but if they don't challenge her effectively, she could single-handedly prove criminal intent, knowledge, and a pattern of illegal conduct. Sources say Trump's legal team spent that 15-minute break this morning in urgent discussion about exactly this problem. How do you cross-examine someone whose credibility is strong, whose documentation is extensive, and whose testimony has already been tested before multiple grand juries? Let me explain what happens next. Trump's lawyers will file motions trying to limit what Hutchinson can say. They'll argue certain conversations are protected by executive privilege, that testimony about advice from attorneys should be excluded, that her notes contain inadmissible evidence. Prosecutors will argue that none of those privilege claims work when the conduct is potentially criminal, that Hutchinson's presence in meetings doesn't extend attorney-client privilege to her, that her notes written at the time are admissible as business records. Judge Whitfield will hear those arguments in closed proceedings. Both sides will present their legal authorities. The judge will decide what Hutchinson can and cannot discuss when she testifies. But based on her denial of the defense motion to exclude Hutchinson completely, it's clear the judge believes the witness has relevant testimony to offer. Reports suggest Hutchinson will testify within the next 2 to 4 weeks. The timing depends on how long the privilege fights take and where she falls in the prosecution's witness order. When she takes the stand, sources say her testimony will be extensive. Prosecutors plan to walk her through dozens of specific meetings and conversations. They'll show her notes as evidence. They'll use her testimony to verify documents and communications. The testimony will likely take 3 to 5 days. It will be organized chronologically through Trump's post-election conduct, showing a pattern of behavior instead of isolated incidents. Let me talk about the political side of Hutchinson appearing as a witness. When she testified to the January 6th committee, Republicans attacked her credibility. They said she was exaggerating. They claimed she had political motivations. Trump himself called her a liar and said she made everything up, but her testimony has held up. Multiple details she provided have been confirmed by other witnesses and documents. Nothing she said has been proven false. Now she's testifying in a criminal trial under oath, subject to cross-examination, with notes written at the time to back up her memory. That's much harder to dismiss as political theater. Republican lawmakers who have defended Trump are already struggling with how to respond. Several have issued statements saying they need to wait to hear what Hutchinson actually says. Others are just staying silent. The problem for Trump's political defenders is that Hutchinson isn't a Democrat. She's not part of some liberal conspiracy. She's a conservative who worked in the Trump administration and then decided she couldn't defend what she saw. That's a difficult narrative for Republican politicians to attack without looking like they're defending potential crimes over truth. Analysts also believe Hutchinson's willingness to testify in criminal proceedings is encouraging other potential witnesses. Sources say at least 2 other former Trump administration officials who have been reluctant to cooperate have reached out to discuss possibly providing testimony. The logic is clear. If Hutchinson can testify and survive the political and personal attacks, others might be willing to do the same. That creates a domino effect where Trump's inner circle starts to break apart more completely, where people decide protecting themselves legally is more important than staying loyal to someone who may be headed for conviction. Let me mention one specific thing observers noticed about Trump's reaction. When Judge Whitfield said Hutchinson's name, Trump didn't look angry. He looked shocked. And then very quickly, observers say that shock turned to something that looked like fear. That reaction tells us something important. Trump knows exactly what Hutchinson witnessed. He knows what conversations she was present for. He knows what she heard him say when he thought only loyalists were listening. And his reaction suggests he understands that those conversations, if testified to under oath with supporting documentation, are devastating. The fear on his face wasn't about whether Hutchinson might lie. It was about knowing she's going to tell the truth. In the hours since this morning's hearing, Trump has been unusually quiet on social media. He hasn't posted attacks on Hutchinson. He hasn't claimed her testimony will be false. He's been silent. That silence is notable because Trump usually responds immediately and aggressively to things he sees as threats. The The fact that he hasn't attacked Hutchinson yet might mean his lawyers advised him that public comments could be used as evidence of witness intimidation. Or it might mean he understands that attacking her will only bring more attention to what she's going to say. Either way, the silence is telling. Reports suggest that over the next few days, as the shock wears off, Trump will begin attacking Hutchinson publicly. He won't be able to stop himself. His pattern has always been to go on offense against anyone who threatens him. But those attacks will be carefully watched by prosecutors and by Judge Whitfield. Any hint that Trump is trying to intimidate Hutchinson or influence her testimony could result in additional charges, or could be used to argue for holding him before trial. Trump is trapped. If he stays silent, Hutchinson's testimony will control the narrative. If he attacks her, he risks making his legal situation worse. Let me tell you what we should watch for in the coming days. First, look for more reporting about what Hutchinson told prosecutors. Sources who know about her grand jury testimony may start leaking details, either to prepare the public for what's coming or to shape the story around her credibility. Second, watch for other witnesses who might be encouraged by Hutchinson's example. If former Trump administration officials start cooperating more openly, it will signal the wall of loyalty is truly breaking down. Third, pay attention to how Trump's lawyers handle their public statements about Hutchinson. They'll want to undermine her credibility without appearing to intimidate her. That's a very difficult balance. Mistakes could create new legal problems. Fourth, watch for any motions from Trump's team trying to delay the trial. Hutchinson's addition to the witness list gives them a new argument for needing more time to prepare. Judge Whitfield has shown little patience for delays. But this is significant enough that she might grant some additional time. The hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning will likely be dominated by arguments about Hutchinson. Trump's team will try every legal method to limit her testimony or exclude it entirely. Prosecutors will defend her relevance and the admissibility of her evidence. Those arguments will give us our first indication of how much of Hutchinson's testimony will actually reach the jury. But based on Judge Whitfield's reaction this morning, her denial of the motion to exclude Hutchinson and her clear statement that the testimony appears relevant, it seems likely the jury will hear a substantial portion of what Hutchinson has to say. And when they do, they'll hear from someone who was in the room, who took notes, who tried to be loyal until loyalty required her to lie, who has spent 14 months working with prosecutors to make sure her testimony is accurate and complete. They'll hear about conversations where Trump was warned he was breaking the law and chose to continue anyway, about meetings where lawyers told him his claims were false and he made them publicly regardless, about moments where he put his personal interests over his constitutional duties. That testimony, coming from someone who has no obvious reason to lie and substantial documentation to support her memory, will be extremely difficult for Trump's defense team to overcome. What happened in that courtroom at 10:23 this morning wasn't just the reading of a name. It was the moment when 14 months of secret cooperation became public, when a witness Trump thought he'd already dealt with became the centerpiece of the criminal case against him. His reaction, that frozen stillness, that pale face, that immediate urgent talk with his lawyers, showed he understands exactly how much danger he's in. And in the days ahead, as Hutchinson's testimony gets closer, as more details come out about what she told prosecutors and what evidence she provided, Trump will face the reality that someone he once trusted to protect him has chosen instead to tell the truth. Because sometimes the most dangerous witnesses aren't the enemies you expect. They're the loyal people who decide they can't keep defending what can't be defended. What will Trump do next? Can his legal team stop this testimony? And what other witnesses might follow Hutchinson's lead?